Mark H. Buzby, U.S. Navy retired, as our keynote speaker.
Thank you all very much. Very kind of you, and thank you, David, for the invitation. It's really great to be with you all tonight and out of Washington. I just drove down this afternoon, and I could feel life breathing back into me by every mile that I left Washington behind. It's a crazy place. There's no two ways about it. There's amazing things going on there. But it really is a privilege to have the opportunity to serve our government, serve the people of our nation in this particular way. This is kind of a bonus tour for me. As you heard, I did 34 years in uniform for the Navy, and thought that was the end of my government service, but not so fast. I was kind of happily into another sort of retirement job when I got a phone call and got asked to consider taking on this set of responsibilities based on my time spent at sea and around ships and around sailors. And unfortunately, that's got a real soft spot in my heart. So I said yes before I asked my wife. Not a good idea, but she's been very supportive, and it's just one of those things where it's a privilege to serve, and I've done it all my life, as many of you have all your lives. It's tough to walk away from something like that. But I'm really pleased to be with you this evening. Some of you I met last year down in Atlantic City at the New Jersey State Chiefs of Police convention down there. So I apologize if you have to listen to me a second time, a second year, but I have changed it up a little bit. It's great to be back home. I'm a South Jersey boy. I was born and raised in Atlantic City. Spent most of my early life there. I grew up in Linwood. That's where we had our home. My brother still lives in our home there in Linwood, where we grew up. And I actually went to school here in Ocean County. I went to Admiral Farragut Academy over in Pine Beach back in the old days. Matter of fact, some of you older folks that are about my age, you probably threw a tomato at me or one of my friends as we were walking down the street in our dress blues. It was pretty sporty in those days. The townies, as we called all you, didn't particularly care for having a bunch of snot-nosed, pretty boys walking around in uniform, snaking all their girls. So they typically would show their displeasure by hurling either insults or tomatoes or eggs or whatever they happened to have in the car as they went by. But it's still good to be home. And it was occurring to me as I was driving down Route 70, the last time, and this is going to really date me, the last time I came down Route 70, it was still concrete. And there was still, so that's been a long time. That's been a long time since I've been down Route 70. But it is really good to be back home here, and it's good to be back amongst this group. So I grew up in a family of first responders, and I've been around them since I was literally that tall. My dad, we ran a hotel in Atlantic City, but my dad was a volunteer firefighter in Linwood, and rose up to the ranks to be deputy chief. So we were always hanging around the firehouse, my brother and I. He'd go in there for a meeting or something, we'd head straight for the apparatus room. I'd climb up into the seat of an old 59 Ward LaFrance open top pumper, and my brother would jump in the cab of a 49 Diamond T, and we'd pretend that we were firemen going to fires, and trying to rank it on the steering wheel. And, every time I get near a fire truck, I still think back of those days, and the smells of the rubber and the canvas hose and all the equipment still bring back wonderful memories. But on weekends, when the fire siren would go off, all of us kids, we would dive into the back of Dad's car, and off we would roar to the fire. He actually had a siren in his car and a red light, so we got to pretend that we were really responding to fires, and those are some pretty exciting times for a little kid. But bottom line is, I grew up kind of in that environment, and my brother still is in that environment. He did 20 years as a police officer in Longport, retired as a captain, and now is the Atlantic County Fire Marshal down there. So he kind of followed Dad's footsteps, and actually a billet that my dad established back in the early 70s. Atlantic County didn't have a fire marshal in those days, didn't have an arson squad either, and he kind of established both of those. So he's got a pretty good legacy down in Atlantic County, and my brother's carrying that on, and is a great source of pride for me too, to see him doing that. He's pretty well known down in that neck of the woods. I actually ended up being a little bit of a first responder myself. When I went on active duty in the Navy, when I graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy. My first job on my first ship was essentially the fire chief. I was the damage control officer. So I got to be in charge of our little fire response team and training of all of our sailors on board for how to be firefighters. And we actually got to put out a couple of fires, small fires that occurred, but I kind of felt that it was kind of in my blood, and felt good about being able to do that, and to talk about equipment when I came home with Dad and brother, and we used a lot of the same kind of gear. But and I've gone on to actually fight several shipboard fires, including some that were pretty big, where I was the guy on the nozzle, because I was the first one there. So I feel like I got a little bit of your spirit in my blood too. So, kind of for those reasons, when David asked me last year if I'd be willing to come speak here this year, I didn't hesitate a second. I was very happy to oblige and to say yes, to speak to a community of people that know what service means. Service comes in very different ways. I'm very familiar with the kind of service that police officers, firefighters, and EMTs in this room kind of put forth to our community, and it's a service that I think is overlooked in many ways. It's taken for granted, I think, by many because you're so good, because you're always there. People don't have to want or worry that if something goes south, that you're not going to be there when they dial 911. That police or fire or EMS are not going to come. One of the blessings of our country is we have such a fine system that gives people that safety net, that response capability, and it's gotten so much better over the years from even when I was a youngster. I think events like this here tonight, where we're going to recognize some extraordinary acts of courage and bravery and service, are very important to do, because I'd be willing to bet a paycheck that any one of you that's going to be coming up here to get one of these awards, recognition, would say, I was just doing my job. I was just doing my duty. Nothing big, nothing exciting. It's what happened on watch that day. It's what happened on my shift. I saw it. I dealt with it. We carried on. We did what we had to do. Because that's kind of the way it is with selfless servants. You don't make a big deal over it. You just do what you got to do. You follow your training. You follow your judgment. Your calling is bigger than yourself. Your calling is to help others in any way that you can. And I think those of us that serve get a great deal of satisfaction out of that. We don't need a whole lot of awards, although these are very nice. The reward comes from seeing somebody continuing to live and to go on with their lives, go on with their families, where otherwise, if you hadn't have interceded, that may not have happened. Yesterday, D-Day, June 6th, 75th anniversary of D-Day, I had the great privilege of attending the National D-Day celebration at the World War II Memorial on the Mall in Washington. I would happen to be the senior U.S. government representative at that ceremony, which I said, is a great honor. There was about 35 or so World War II vets there, almost all of them in wheelchairs. A few of them were standing, but just about all of them in wheelchairs. Several of them were present at D-Day, either flying above it in B-26s or running the landing craft that were coming up on the stabbing the beach, or guys that actually went down the ramp and walked across that beach. Their stories were pretty remarkable. I got to speak with several of them. The greatest part, though, was there was a lot of young people there. More young people than I've seen in a really long time at one of those ceremonies. They had bussed in groups and groups of people from the hometowns of these veterans that had flown in. They typically brought with them a high school's worth of kids to see these stories and rally around their veteran. And I think that was the highlight of the day, certainly for me, but for most of those veterans, to see that the next generation was embracing and understanding what they did and why they did it. But even them, as I talk with them, every single one of them that I talked to, and I probably talked to about a dozen of them, said, hey, I was just doing my job. That's what I was asked to do. That's what I was trained to do. I was just doing my job. It needed to be done, so I did it. Where do we get such people? Where do we get such men like that? Well, as we will hear in a few minutes, we're going to hear about some more of those people, men and women who have stepped forward, who have done what had to be done, that proved that selfless service didn't just exist back in 1944. It exists today. It exists in the generation that is here today. It exists in the generation of even millennials and Gen Xers, and you name it, folks that are fighting our battles overseas and that are defending our population here. That selfless service, love of country and fellow countrymen, it's not a generational thing. It's not a generational thing. It's part of being an American. And for you special people that have taken that extra step forward, put yourselves between the general population and harm's way, we owe you a special debt of gratitude. Truly do. It's not for everybody. Not everybody takes that step forward. Whatever has inspired you to do that, and it's different for all of us. When you hear that calling, you know that calling. I know the calling that I heard when it was time for me to serve in the Navy. I heard it loud and clear. I know for all of you, you heard that calling too. However it came to you, whether it was someone who mentored you, or whether it was something that you just woke up one day and said, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be a cop, or I want to help people in need medically. That's pretty special. So my hat's off to the 200 Club for what you do to help in that recognition, and the various generous sponsors who enable you to do that. Help put this show on tonight. Thanks for that great support you provide for this community that is here to support us. Unfortunately, the other reason for the 200 Club is to support those who have been lost in the line of duty. There's still a need for that, because not everybody gets to be a living hero. Some of us, some of you have suffered losses of your patriots and your peers. Unfortunately, that happens still all too often. I would just relate, just down in Northern Virginia and DC area, where I live, just in the last 2 weeks, we lost a firefighter off duty who was on his farm and had the tractor he was riding rolled on an embankment, pinned him underneath of it, and he died before anybody could get to him. And a week later, a Prince George's County, Maryland police officer off duty riding his motorcycle got run down on the Beltway, lost his life. And then a week ago tonight in Virginia Beach, down where I live now, during the week, of course we had the mass shooting, and would have had another police fatality had it not been for the ballistic vest that he was wearing. But he and his other three compatriots, they ran to the sound of gunfire, and they saved so many lives. We lost 12. Would have been much higher if they had not gone in and engaged that shooter at essentially point blank range in about a 20-minute firefight with that gentleman who was armed with 245 caliber automatics with extended clips. So thankfully there was a happy ending there, but you know, it's everywhere. It's pervasive. I don't have to tell you guys that. You know it. We live it every day. So while we celebrate tonight, rightfully so, let's remember, as we have already done so tonight, those that didn't make it home to watch that particular night. Because they were doing the same thing that many of the folks in here were doing. They were serving their community. They were doing so with pride. They were doing so with courage. Their story didn't end quite as happily, but they still have families that need to be taken care of. And thankfully, the 200 Club is here to help do that and to help honor them and the folks we have here tonight. So it's a great pleasure to be with you all. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of it, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Buzby. I just certainly want to thank you for coming up here tonight, spending some time with us. At this point, I've got a couple things that I'd like to give you. One is a note from us, which really thanks you for your sincere words and just how you feel about our uniformed services and our men and women that protect us every day. I wrote this card up and of course had it done before, so if you didn't
You knew I was going to be good, right?
If you didn't speak very well, I was going to leave it. But I'd like to give that to you.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to give you a token of our appreciation. It's a watch with the 200 Club of Ocean County on it. So again, I hope you'll wear it. Congratulations.
Thank you all very much.
At this time, we're going to bring coffee out. We're going to take about 10 minutes or so that they can get the desserts on the table, and then we'll begin with the awards.